Investigation revealed no single agency is overseeing the costs that go into homeless camp cleanups, but that's about to change.
Outside of a women's shelter.
Activists want to know.
You know where they're going? So you're just here to blow their around while we pay the taxes for you to do it, but you don't have to answer for where they're going. Nice, nice.
State legislators
I move that the speaker
are debating it.
I'm wondering if you have a rough estimate of the negative economic impact that homelessness creates in the state of Utah.
In the area of, at a minimum, tens of millions to hundreds of millions, just to give you a range.
When a city, county, or state agency breaks down a homeless camp, what does it cost Utah taxpayers? 2 News Investigates discovered no one is really tracking the costs, and the financial burden is getting passed to you.
You get what you measure, you fix what you measure, you are what you measure, and I'm always in favor of additional metrics.
Representative Steve Ellison, a certified public accountant, sponsored House Bill 347 this legislative session. It creates a state homeless services office and a director.
We believe this new position that this bill authorizes and funds will be a critical position to give us the insight into the costs that we're currently expending. If taxpayer dollars are being expended here, I think it's fair game to say we need a little bit more detail.
Ellison says without abatements, camps will grow, endangering public safety, destroying private property, and putting vulnerable people at risk.
It's a serious issue. It's an expensive issue. It's an issue we're going to pay for one way or another.
Dale Keller is the Environmental Health Bureau Manager at the Salt Lake County Health Department.
For environmental health, we try to focus in on the 2 variables that we have control and regulatory authority and responsibility for, and that's the public health component and the environmental degradation caused by these camps.
The county's Environmental Health Division has only 1 full-time and 2 part-time positions to handle camp cleanups and their complaints. Approximately 5% of those complaints result in abatements.
It's a substantial workload, and certainly every year the resources that we spend in addressing this certainly aren't going down and are gradually going up. And I would argue that our cost and relative to this is not in line with the problem.
The Environmental Health Division took in $9.5 million in revenue last year. Most of that comes from inspection costs from restaurants, food handling permits, and other fees. Camp cleanups are one of 2 programs that don't take in any fees, permits, or revenue, so the cost comes straight out of the health department's budget.
Those are just issues we don't have time to deal with. We have a finite budget and assets to deal toward that problem. But it's a good chunk of our workload.
Through a public records request, 2 News Investigates obtained the hours, locations, and costs of each homeless camp cleanup last year. The division spent more than 2,000 hours and more than $230,000. Their biggest expense is office time, planning an abatement and coordinating with public officials and law enforcement. Do you think it's appropriate, given that it's all coupled in these big chunks of the money for office meetings, for taxpayers to understand that?
Yeah, the cost of doing business. I mean, the office support, the time that we're doing here would fall under those same categories.
Just a few years ago, police weren't needed in these abatements.
Sergeant Keith Horrocks of Salt Lake City Police says the department's need to be at abatements has increased.
The abatements could be carried out without the assistance of police. They were smaller encampments, wasn't the need for traffic control, and you didn't have a lot of the activism that follows the abatements like you do now.
2 News Investigates learned most law enforcement agencies don't track how much time and how many officers they send to abatements. But Salt Lake City says they will now.
As our need to be at the abatements has increased, it's been obvious to us that that's something that we need to track so that we're aware of how many resources we're dedicating specifically to that abatement.
Paying attention to the money, where it's coming in and where it's going, is what state officials are hoping to find out this year.
If we look at what issues surrounding homelessness cost us in our criminal justice system, in public assistance programs, in the nonprofit sector, and frankly, just in terms of human suffering, I think we'll all be shocked when we see what the bottom line is.
Governor Cox signed House Bill 347 just yesterday. Now, in 60 days from today, state officials will be able to hire Utah's new homeless services director. Mark and Heidi.